Hello, my name is Meg Sparling, and I am the Funding Opportunities Coordinator in the Office of Research at UC Davis. This video will show you how to get started with Pivot Research Professional, which is a large funding opportunity database that UC Davis subscribes to. It's probably the largest funding opportunity database for academic research. It also has opportunities for things like travel, curriculum development, equipment grants, etc. So this video is a new video because we recently got single sign-on access to the database so that users can now use their Kerberos information to log in to the Pivot database. So before I show you how to use the database, I'm just going to show you really quickly for those of you who are new to the database, how to use your institutional credentials to log in. And then for those of you who already have an account, how to link those credentials to your existing account. So you'll see a set of instructions here. So accessing Pivot using your institution's credentials. So this is for new users. To access the Pivot Opportunity Database, please type in pivot.proquest.com into your browser, and you will land on the sign-in page. You'll select University of California, Davis from the institutional drop-down menu, which you see right here, and then you will follow the instructions from there to access the database. I think it will ask you to claim a profile, etc. If you already have an account, what you can do is try to access, so you'll click University of California, Davis from this drop-down menu under Access Pivot using your institution's credentials. But then if you already have an account, you're going to receive this little error message here. And that's not a problem because they have an option within this error message to link your provider credentials with your existing Pivot Research Professional account. So then you'll make sure this is all filled out correctly and hit Get Started, and then the database will send you an email to your UC Davis email address, and within that email there'll be a link that you'll click. And once you do that, your existing Pivot account will now be linked to your Kerberos information. So you'll be able to use either login to access the database. So that's how you get started. I'm going to jump now to the database itself. Here we are. So this is what the new dashboard for Pivot looks like. This was updated in the last 6 months or so. I'm going to get myself logged in here. So as I said, this is the new dashboard. For those of you who have been using Pivot for a while, this looks new and I believe improved. There are some things that I'm going to point out really quickly. So there's now some tips and resources here on the right-hand side. There's easier access to the searches that you are going to set up for yourself here in these tabs, and also your profile. There's now a link up here at the top to find internal funding, which will take you to the same page within Pivot called Internal Ops. And then there is a link to apply to limited submissions programs, or even to access the list of open limited submission competitions. And when you do that, you are taken to our UC Davis InfoReady review page, which will look like this for you. And then in order to see the limited submissions, you will click on Organizer, click on Limited Submissions, and this is the current active limited submission competition list. So if you are looking for a particular competition that you know is upcoming, that is where it will be. There are a few things that I always tell people about using Pivot. Pivot is a great database, but it's a little tricky to figure out at first, but there's a very helpful hack to using it efficiently and effectively. And so what I always tell people, you get to this dashboard and you're going to be really tempted to type things into this large search bar, and they make it very tempting. And what you will find if you do that is that it's not very helpful. It will not really give you a great sense of what is actually in the database, because you haven't limited your search in all of the ways that you could to the things that are really of interest to you. So instead of typing things into the search bar, instead, I really recommend that people use the advanced search feature. So this is this option that's pretty small underneath this giant bar, but it's really the best way to search the database. So I'm going to click on advanced search. And this is going to take me to the funding advanced search form. And so again, there'll be boxes up here that you're going to be tempted to type things in, but I don't recommend doing that right away. Instead, you're going to bypass those boxes and focus on a few of these drop-down menus here in the middle. So depending on your funding needs, some of these might be more relevant to you than others. The ones that are pretty much relevant to everybody are funding type. So if I click on the little arrow there, it shows me all the different types of funding that are in the database. I referenced how there are a lot of different types of academic funding in here. And so this is a good way to kind of familiarize yourself with what's in here. I'll just slowly scroll through this so you can see. And then if I click on this, it will add that search term to my search. So I've selected research, project grants, and innovation. So now the only results that I get back will be funding opportunities that have this listed under funding type. In addition to funding type, you may also appreciate the applicant type feature, where, for example, if you are an early career researcher, which the database defines as a postdoc or an early career faculty member, you can narrow your search to funding opportunities that early career applicants can apply to. You'll also see that there is an option to limit your search to things that graduate students can apply to, undergraduate students, etc. There is a way to limit to women, to minority, etc. So that is a great way for some to narrow their search to specific types of opportunities like those that are meant for early career researchers. And then, in addition to these other categories, which I'm not going to spend much time on, there is the keyword feature. And this is a way for you to narrow your search based on topic, field, subfields, etc. So there are two different ways to select keywords and enter them into your search. You can either type them into this box, or, type a keyword into this box and kind of see what comes up. So I typed in energy, and this brought up all of the keywords that have the word energy in them. You'll see that they are sorted into categories. So the energy industry keyword is located in this business management and commerce larger folder. There's also just a energy sciences folder. And then you'll see the energy sciences main folder is kind of broken up into subfolders that go down to things like alternative energy sources, direct energy conversion, etc. And so I'm saying folder because if you click instead on the other option, which is this browse, you will actually see the folders and how the keywords are sorted into these folders. So here's the energy sciences main folder. And if I click on this arrow next to it, I can actually see all of the subfolders. And then I can sometimes dial down even further to the specific keywords that are located within that subfolder. So one of the things that I always say at this point is that a lot of people are really tempted to find the very, very specific keywords that are related to the research that they do. And while that is probably a helpful introductory exercise, it's the thing that it's probably going to teach you first and foremost is that there are very few things in the database that are categorized into your very, very specific keyword or keywords. And usually what you're going to be interested in applying to in terms of funding opportunities are things that are a little bit more general. So instead of finding the very specific keywords that relate to your research, you may want to find them and then kind of back out one or two levels so that you're kind of casting a little bit of a wider net. And instead of doing something like energy metabolism, you might be just backing out to the energy sciences folder generally, or to one of the subfolders in energy sciences, for example. So the keyword part of the search is really kind of the art where there's a little bit of experimentation that goes into the building of a search. Sometimes you'll be pulling keywords from a lot of different folders, especially if your work is very interdisciplinary. You may be pulling from a number of these different larger folders in order to kind of capture what it is that you're doing. And that's perfectly normal. And I would say that, as I said, because it's an experimental process of kind of figuring out which keywords are the ones for you, if you want advice or to kind of brainstorm, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to do that with you. So right now I have a search set up for early career research funding in the energy sciences. So I've selected 3 search terms here. I just want to note before we run this search that this form is set up in a way so that up here in this white space, anything I select will add those selections to my search. However, if I continue down, you'll see this gray area that's called exclude opportunities matching. And this actually has the same drop-down menus. However, if you select anything in here, like I'm always kind of weeding out prizes and awards from my searches because I'm not usually interested in them. I'm interested in grants and not awards. So if you select something in this space, in the gray space, that means that that search term will be excluded from your search. And I bring this up because it's really helpful for some people if they find that a specific type of funding opportunity is really bogging down their search or taking up a lot of space. And if they could just get rid of that one part somehow, then their search would be easier for them to scroll through and kind of look through and use, then this is the way to do that. So you'll use this excludes opportunities magic part and be able to kind of weed some things out of your search that are bogging it down. So once I have my search terms kind of the way I want them, I'm going to hit search, kind of see what happens. So for this search, I got 455 results. You can see that the search terms that I used are listed up here at the top. You'll also see that there are 3 options here. So advanced search will take you back to a cleared search form. Refined search will take you back to the search form, but it will still have the selections that you made in it. So if you, for example, you get to this list of 455 and you say, oh, but I'm missing this particular thing, or oh, I really want to get rid of stuff that you know, is in an area of the world that is not relevant to me. You can click refine search and then go back and kind of tweak things. So I mentioned location. Sometimes if you find yourself getting a lot of search results that are for, like, you know, Eastern Europe or New Hampshire or something, and you want to limit it to things that are really either just for our area, or it doesn't matter where the activity is being done. This is what I come in and do. I enter California into the location, and then I make sure that these unrestricted and unspecified boxes are checked so that I'm getting stuff that's relevant for activity being done in California, or things where the activity location could be anywhere. It could, it's either unrestricted or unspecified. So you'll see when I go back to my search results will be much lower because I've gotten rid of stuff that is in the activity is required to take place in some other area of the country or of the world. So, so I talked about advanced search taking you to a cleared form, refined search taking you to the form that you just filled out with everything still there so that you can kind of tweak it. And then this middle option, the save search, is really the big payoff of Pivot. So once you get your search terms exactly the way that you want them, or at least in the way that you want to kind of run them for a couple weeks and see how things go, you can save the search. And I usually kind of save it to remind myself of what the main search terms were. So I'm going to do early career. And as you can see, I've done this example a few times before. Early career energy research. So that kind of reminds me what the main search terms were. And then the database asks you if you would like to receive a weekly email containing new or updated opportunities from this query. And if I leave that checked, that will turn the email alert on. I probably already have this one, so I'm going to say no in this case. But we'll go back to where it already is. So if I've saved it, it will be in my saved searches, and I'll take you there in a moment and show you where it is and all that, and I'll explain the email and everything. But before we leave this page, I just want to say a few more things about the search results page. So as you can see, it gives you some very brief information about each funding opportunity that it has returned to you. There's the title of the program, the sponsor, the deadline that's listed, and whether it's confirmed or whether it's anticipated and they're waiting for a deadline to be confirmed. Tells you sometimes the amount, depending on the record. And then over here on the left, you'll see that you can kind of narrow things further. So let's say you get a bunch of search results and you're like, well, okay, but I really only want to look at stuff where the deadline is confirmed, for example. So then you could narrow it by clicking on confirmed. Or I really only want to see things that are from federal agencies. And I really only want federal funding. So you can click that and it'll take you to the 18 opportunities on the list that are offered by federal sponsors, or etc. So that's a way to kind of narrow things further, especially if you get more results than you had kind of hoped to see, or more results than you're kind of willing to look through in one sitting. That's a way to kind of narrow them further. You can also, now that it says last 7 days here, so this will show you actually, in this case, the 4 opportunities that have been posted to the database or updated in the database in the last week. So this is a way to kind of get a sense of what's brand new, and that's really helpful sometimes. The only other thing that I want, well, there's 2 other things that I want to say. First, you'll notice that there'll be check boxes next to this, next to the funding opportunities. And when you click on them, it gives you the option to track them. And what that does is it adds it to a list for you, which I'll show you in a moment. And tracking means that if you track something, the database will notify you when anything is modified on the program page for that funding opportunity. So if you find something that you're really, really interested in and you want updates on it, or if, for example, you're waiting for the next deadline to be announced, or the next funding areas to be announced, you can track that funding opportunity in the database, and it will email you as soon as anything has changed on that program page. So that's really helpful. You can check things and then share them with other people. You can do this actually with anybody at UC Davis. They don't have to have been in the database before, but it'll just ask you for their email address, and you can share it with them via email. There's export, so you can check certain things here, and then when you hit export, it will give you the option to export those funding opportunities in either HTML, in Excel, etc. And it gives you a little bit of control over what information exactly it is that you're exporting, whether it's a full record or just a few different fields. So that's a good way if you're trying to create like a spreadsheet of funding opportunities. You can export things to Excel, etc. And then you will not have the curate option. That's an admin option. Sorry. And then there is a calendar view where if you check certain things, you can then view them in a calendar. This might be helpful for some people, so I wanted to point it out. All right, so as promised, I'm going to show you, if I go to saved searches, this will kind of take me to a page where I'm able to see all my saved searches. And as you can see, my early career energy research search that I just ran is here. You'll remember that I did not turn the email alert on, so there's no email here. But for those that I have the alert turned on, there's a little email icon next to them. You can also see, so there's my 113 results from that search. You can see when you click on options that you can actually share a saved search with someone. This is really helpful for people who work in teams and units where they can set up searches and then share them with the other members of their research team, with the colleagues that they work with. It's a really great way to kind of set some things up and then share them with people so that the results can be monitored kind of across a few different people. You will not have the publish as a curated search option, but you will have edit. So edit is the way for you to go back later and refine your search terms so that, let's say you run your search for a few weeks and you realize that you kind of want to add a couple more keywords, or you want to exclude a few things that are bogging down your search. You can come back here and hit edit, and it will take you to that advanced search form with all of your selections there, and you can just tweak them from there. And then when you hit search and then save search, it will kind of do like a save of this particular search so that your new selections will be updated to that search. You can view archived results. So if you go on vacation or on leave for a month or so, you can come back later and actually see what your results were from 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. You can turn the email alert off and on here, and you can delete the search from here. There is one important thing that I want to clarify about the email alert, which is another great thing about Pivot, which is that you'll see I have a few different emails here, but this does not mean that I get like 4 different emails every week for each saved search. I actually get only one email every week, and it is a digest email that contains all the new and updated opportunities for these 4 searches for that week in one email. So the database is really good at not blanketing you with emails all the time. You kind of get one email. Usually I think it comes at Sunday at like 2 a.m. or something like that. And you can come in on Monday and drink your coffee and look at your search results all in one email, and it's nice. So that's the saved search feature. There's also, I mentioned tracking, how you can track a funding opportunity, and then the database will give you will send you an email update when anything has been changed on that program page. The tracked feature is also just a great way, and it's the only way really to create kind of a running list for yourself in Pivot of things that you're interested in applying to, or things that you want to keep track of for one reason or another. So this is kind of like you can treat it as kind of like a favorites list or an active list or something like that. Shared is where you can see funding opportunities that you've shared with people recently. Received is where you can see funding opportunities that other people may have shared with you recently. The advisor tool is actually a saved search that the database creates for you based on information in your profile. So do make sure that when you kind of get up and running with Pivot that you go in and edit your profile so that it has really good detailed information. And when you do that, you can come back to this advisor tool, and there'll be some things that are really well tailored to you. I like to tell people that it's a good brainstorming tool where you can create your saved searches, but then if you kind of want to think outside the box a little bit, you can come into the advisor tool and kind of scroll through what the database thinks that you might be interested in and be like, oh, okay, I never thought about doing, like applying to something like that before, but that makes sense. I'll think about that. So that's the advisor tool. So the curated tool is actually a collection of lists and searches that myself and the other administrators of the Pivot account have created over the years, focused on specific topics. So you'll see, for example, this is going to look a little different for you, but there's curated searches in here for all different kinds of things. including COVID-19 research funding, funding on health disparities, postdoc awards, etc. So curated searches are searches that are constantly being updated by the database. And there's a large collection of them in our Pivot site for you to look through. And then you'll also see there are curated lists. And so if a search is constantly being updated, a list is a static list of opportunities that we have created that we hopefully regularly add things to, but it's not updated automatically by the database. And so there are some things in here related to that. I think we're kind of in the process right now of moving a lot of stuff over from the static lists that we kind of have to constantly update to the curated searches, which the database will update for us automatically. But they are there for your reference and your perusal. And then the final option from this list is internal. So this is a list of some of the internal funding opportunities that are available at UC Davis currently. This is not an exhaustive list, but I do what I can to get as many of the internal funding opportunities into this list as I can. And it's nice to be able to have these sorts of things show up in people's saved searches, etc., so that they're reminded that there are things even on our campus that are exciting to apply to. So that's the internal funding opportunity feature. I'm going to take us back to the dashboard. So I mentioned the tips and resources over here on the right. If you aren't necessarily finding what you're interested in, or you want to kind of explore a few other databases based on your needs, I have links here to a few other funding opportunity databases. If you're interested in state funding, here's a link to the California Grants Portal, which is a new portal that collects all of the state funding opportunities for the state of California. Here's a link to grants.gov, which is where you can find all of the federal funding posted by the federal government. The Philanthropy News Digest is for foundation and nonprofit funding. And then this COVID-19 research funding is a page that I manage that promotes COVID-19 related funding to the campus. So that's the dashboard. Just a few other things before I wrap up. We've been really focusing on the funding tab, or the funding section of the database. There's a few other sections, however, up here that I just want to mention really briefly. So profiles is a way for you to look at the profiles of other users at our institution. If you're looking for collaborators, etc., this might be a really good tool for you to explore. They have a conferences section of the site where you can browse a database of conferences and papers invited. The newest part of their site is this awarded grants, which they've just really added in the last 6 months or so, and they're continually updating. This is just the beginning. they keep telling me they're going to keep adding more and more sponsors, but this is a place for you to find information about awarded grants, and they actually have a lot of really important sponsors in here already. They do have NEH, the National Endowment for the Humanities, but also all of the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation stuff, and DoD, the Department of Defense, and the Department of Energy. That stuff is in here too. So that might be really helpful for some people to look at the history of a particular program's awards, etc. And then finally, they have a news feature now where you can actually look at some research professional news. This is going to be relevant to some of you more than others. We do not have a premium subscription to this content, but there is a lot of content here that you can access for free. And so for those of you who are interested in news about research funding, etc., this is a great new resource for us. So I think I'll leave it at that. I don't want to overwhelm you with too much information. Please feel free to reach out. If you have questions, you can, here's my email address under this contact us. It's just my email address, which is msparling, S as in Sam, P as in Peter, ARLING @ucdavis.edu. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you have further questions after watching this. If you would like to kind of brainstorm keywords, if you have suggestions about resources that would be helpful on using Pivot, etc., I'm happy to chat. Thanks.